would like to spend. Or rather allow to talk to all of you. We are all here to
Welcome back to day one of the debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure 2019-2020 in the sum of $1,591,589,000. The House is debating a motion by the Prime Minister to adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee that met yesterday. It entails public sector spending for the financial year, including infrastructural projects, healthcare and education, to name a few. Members of Parliament continue now with the second leg of the debate on the estimate of revenue and expenditure 2019-2020.
Honourable members, please be reminded that the question before the House is that the Honourable House of Assembly do adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2019-2020 in the sum of $1,591,589,000 as a charge against the consolidated fund and other funds of the state of St. Lucia. Minister for Tourism and Member for Ancillary Canneries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion put forward by the Honourable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance that this Honourable House, Mr. Speaker, adopt the Standing Committee's report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do so because in this motion, we see, Mr. Speaker, by the estimates prepared by the Department of Finance, that this motion, Mr. Speaker, and the summaries of the estimates and expenditure do have a number of very encouraging signs for the local, economic, and social context. Mr. Speaker, overall deficit last year was projected at $163,915,129. But, Mr. Speaker, the outcome, Mr. Speaker, showed that the fiscal situation in terms of the overall balances, Mr. Speaker, registered an improvement or performed $95 million better than was expected last year. When we saw, Mr. Speaker, in the estimates that the revised figures showed that in the last financial year we only recorded a $68,434,945 in actual deficit. So this, Mr. Speaker, is a good sign that the overall fiscal situation is improving. Mr. Speaker, another good sign is the fact that the deficit to GDP ratio has declined significantly. So last year, Mr. Speaker, in the year 2017, it was recorded at 3.4% of GDP. But we see this year in the estimates presented before us that it has been reduced significantly, Mr. Speaker, to 1.3% of GDP, which would suggest, Mr. Speaker, one of the lowest in the Eastern Caribbean and among member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank, Mr. Speaker, and really within the prescribed limits of where economists and experts, Mr. Speaker, in the field of finance would want your deficit to GDP ratio to be. So we see there, Mr. Speaker, good improvement in terms of the overall deficit, and we see another good sign, Mr. Speaker, the reduction in terms of the deficit to GDP ratio in these figures. We also heard, Mr. Speaker, from the Department, the Minister of Finance in his presentation, that the sinking fund, Mr. Speaker, has accumulated $21 million. And this, Mr. Speaker, is another indication that the finances of this country is being managed with a clear strategy and a good direction. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about the value-added tax. And a lot has been said, in fact, it was projected by the opposition in their math that they have done, that we were going to lose in excess of $52 million. They said, no, leave the VAT rate where it belonged, where they had imposed it on the people at 15%. This government, upon assuming office, said that this is oppressive. This is too much for the people to carry. And what we did, Mr. Speaker, was fulfill an election promise, and we reduced the VAT rate by what? 16% from where it was. But, Mr. Speaker, by 2.5 percentage points, from 15% to 12.5%. Mr. Speaker, what was the outcome of that policy prescription or that decision taken by this government? The outcome was the math that was done by the opposition, as we have seen on so many occasions, Mr. Speaker, suggests that they have got it wrong again, that they don't understand how to manage this country. And what we have seen, Mr. Speaker, we didn't lose 52 million. As presented by the Prime Minister, we lose a mere $5.2 million. And, Mr. Speaker, creating a better enabling environment so that prices in the supermarket for the rank and file, for the local populace, Mr. Speaker, to at least have some wiggle room to be better. Mr. Speaker, we've heard the argument that a lot of people have not felt this tax. But, Mr. Speaker, let it not be on the count of our government's policy, Mr. Speaker. It is because, Mr. Speaker, of our concern for the people of St. Lucia that we have made this reduction in the value-added tax, reducing it from 15 to 12.5%. Mr. Speaker, thereby realizing a very narrow decline in the revenues of this country. Another good policy. Mr. Speaker, we see as well, affecting my own ministry, Mr. Speaker, I am in support of this motion for a number of different reasons. One being in the reclassification of the tourism marketing expenditure, which, Mr. Speaker, would have come out of the capital expenditure. We would have had to borrow hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. Mr. Speaker, last year we allocated somewhere in the region of 34 million towards the tourist board, Mr. Speaker. Some years the allocation was as much as $15 million if we went back to the year 2007. Mr. Speaker, this reclassification does two things. It sustains the marketing of tourism. So the mechanism which we're providing, whereby our proposal to introduce the tourism head tax sometime in this financial year, does ensure, Mr. Speaker, that tourism, the largest industry and the largest contributor to jobs and gross domestic product and the largest generator of foreign exchange, Mr. Speaker, that will finally have a mechanism whereby it is sustainable, it is assured, it is stable, so that in times of crises, Mr. Speaker, that we have seen in the years of 2008 and 2009, you don't have the uncertainty. The tourism authority can then manage and then budget over a number of years because they are not relying on the whim of a finance minister, but they are relying on science of the projected arrival numbers so that they can plan for the marketing of the destination. But it also does this. It then allows tourism to pay for itself, to pay for the marketing of this country, because the head tax will be levied against tourists that are staying in various hotel rooms. But by doing so, Mr. Speaker, it also allows for more monies to be available for schools and for roads and for social development programs like playing fields and other development initiatives, Mr. Speaker, which a government will need to undertake at any given time to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we are able to finance the aspirations of our communities, of our country, in a very good stead. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion as well because what we have seen, Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 years is a return to real growth, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I have some figures here which showed that in 2012, the economy declined by 0.3%. Mr. Speaker, so we recorded negative 0.3 growth, which means the economy actually contracted. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, there was a -2% growth. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, it was 0.0. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, it was 0.3. Now, Mr. Speaker, what we have seen is a real return to growth where in the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, 2017, the growth rate was at 3.3%. In 2018, it was at 1.5. Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 years, this economy has averaged a growth rate of 2.4%, returning, Mr. Speaker, to real, healthy, and consistent growth, ensuring that we bring about opportunity for everyone. Mr. Speaker, I agree. It takes a long time for the whole process of development to happen. And Mr. Speaker, while some may argue that they're not feeling the growth, Mr. Speaker, it's only a matter of time that they will. And we're not boasting about these figures. All we're saying, Mr. Speaker, is that the country has come out of recession and it is moving in the right direction under the capable hands of this government. That is the simple point that we're making when we say that we have returned to growth. Because one thing that is necessary, Mr. Speaker, for us to finance all of our dreams, for us to ensure that we have schools, for us to ensure that the roads are in good shape in our constituencies, for good health care to take place, Mr. Speaker, one thing is necessary, and that is for growth to take place. And that is what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, with the policies put forward by this administration. So, Mr. Speaker, the economy is in capable hands. The economy, Mr. Speaker, is being managed properly. And I have no reason, Mr. Speaker, not to support the figures put forward here today. We've seen the surpluses returning in the current and recurrent surpluses, Mr. Speaker. We're proud of those figures. It means, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that the fiscal situation is improving significantly. Do we have a long way to go? Yes. But we're coming, Mr. Speaker, from a place of economic recession, of zero growth, of minus numbers, Mr. Speaker, growth rates below zero. And what's interesting, Mr. Speaker, is the same people who are experts today and who can write a thesis for you on what we need to do to take the economy forward. They've had 15 years in the last 20, and they couldn't do it themselves. Now they are coming and they're saying that they have the answers to take St. Lucia out of the hole that they themselves have placed it in. Mr. Speaker, we cannot return to the days when there was economic drought. We cannot return, Mr. Speaker, to the days when businesses closed. We cannot return, Mr. Speaker, to the days when people lay employees off in huge numbers, Mr. Speaker, because there was economic contraction. Mr. Speaker, so growth is a positive thing whereby only a matter of time, if we continue on this path, Mr. Speaker, that we will have larger numbers of our citizens that will benefit from the growth that is taking place in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, under the Department of Tourism, in Department 43 of the estimates, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing to spend some $50 million, and it is across 4 departments, Mr. Speaker, looking at the government information services and looking at the Department of Tourism and the Tourism Authority. Also, Mr. Speaker, we hope to institute the new statutory body of village tourism, and, Mr. Speaker, some financing to be done to the administering of the Tourism Council. Mr. Speaker, at the Government Information Services, we have looked at the equipment. We have improved the equipment, and if you look at the channel, Mr. Speaker, you will see that the high definition technology is in full force, and there's been a tremendous improvement, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the quality of broadcast from the Government Information Services. Mr. Speaker, also therein we have revamped the news packaging. There has been a notable improvement of the budget coverage, Mr. Speaker, where there's a lot of analysis and a lot of production that has gone into the GIS and its management. And, Mr. Speaker, better covering of government information in various communities, various government projects has been executed tremendously with the implementation of the nightly newscast, which starts at 7 p.m. So I want to thank the staff of the Government Information Services for their commitment, Mr. Speaker, to the revamping of the GIS and the overall improvement of the institution. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Tourism, we're busy with the execution of the OECS competitive tourism project, Mr. Speaker, a project which seeks to build the capacity of vendors and to create better linkages between the local and indigenous economy to the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. The improvement of the Castries, general facade of the Castries area is also included in that project, Mr. Speaker, where over the next 6 years we will be spending some $40 million to plug the competitive gaps, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the tourism sector is bringing improved returns to the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, one good thing that is happening is that we have had 2 record-breaking years, and we continue, Mr. Speaker, to break records in terms of arrivals. But the next step, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that with this growth that we have, Mr. Speaker, stronger economic penetration, to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that there is more inclusiveness. And so out of this philosophy, Mr. Speaker, came the idea for village tourism, where what we want to ensure, Mr. Speaker, is that in various communities that have a good opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to be part of the tourism fabric, that in these institutions we will create the enabling environment. We will empower more St. Lucians, more villages, more of our citizens to be in charge of the tourism industry, to participate, Mr. Speaker, more at the entrepreneurial level, where they themselves can be champions of this industry. So, Mr. Speaker, the Village Tourism Act is completed. We are circulating it to various stakeholders for consultation, and I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, that in this year, in the coming months, we will bring the bill to this Honorable House for debate and for enactment, so that we can have, Mr. Speaker, a proper institution and a proper legislative framework as it relates to the governance of community and village tourism in St. Lucia for the furtherance of our people. Mr. Speaker, to improve the governance of the overall destination, we have taken a comprehensive look at how the tourism industry is managed. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are very proud to report to this House that we have instituted the Tourism Advisory Council. And the Tourism Advisory Council, Mr. Speaker, which was operationalized sometime last year, has been meeting on a monthly basis. It brought together 17 public and private sector agencies. And what these agencies did, Mr. Speaker, is it has made tourism everybody's business. And it has created a greater synergy between the public and private sector. And so now, Mr. Speaker, there is a proper exchange of information, and tourism is being approached from a national and holistic and comprehensive manner, so that, Mr. Speaker, we can advance the management to better deal with some of the perennial issues that are afflicting the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, at the level of the Tourist Board, the Tourism Authority, a lot was said earlier about how much we give to airlines by the member for Castries South, who has been announced by the opposition as the shadow minister for tourism, and along with a lot of other designations. Well, Mr. Speaker, as shadows do, they're never the real representation of what is. And so to suggest in this House that there are millions without any proof, without any reference to the specific page where there is millions being paid to airlines, is erroneous and disingenuous. And it is consistent with the behavior of the member from Castries South. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is this. When we came in and assumed the government in the year 2016, there was over $1 million in MRG. To one airline, it was United Airlines, and it was for 2 flights, one from Chicago and another flight from Newark. Mr. Speaker, the deal had already been cooked by the previous administration. We reviewed it, and as a good government, what we did, Mr. Speaker, we honored the deal, and we went through with the deal. Mr. Speaker, well, that investment has proven to be successful on one front, where the flight from Chicago, with creative marketing and with consistent sales and public relations efforts, Mr. Speaker, what we've been able to do is sustain the Chicago flight. And it is operating, Mr. Speaker, even to this day without an MRG, because the load factors were very, very good. When it came to the flight from Newark, it performed very badly, and we ended the relationship. Mr. Speaker, there is no MRG on the books today at the St. Lucia Tourism Authority. Mr. Speaker, line items where it says airline support is very consistent with what has been happening way before the member for Castries East was the Minister of Tourism. Where what you would do, Mr. Speaker, and let me just educate the member, the shadow Minister of Tourism, that what airline companies have what is called tour operators. So you have Virgin Atlantic is different from Virgin Holidays, and JetBlue is different from JetBlue Vacations, and American Airlines is a different company from AA Vacations. And so, Mr. Speaker, what you invariably do is you have these marketing relationships, because a lot of the airlines in their tour operator department, they are in control of the distribution of tourists to all parts of the country. And so the booking of packaged holidays, it's normal. It's been there from time in memoriam. And so the honorable member is either disingenuous or misinformed or doesn't know what he's talking about. But you see, Mr. Speaker, I've long been convinced that when he comes to this House, he's always briefed. And he admitted it here today in his explanation of the numbers, when he said, well, maybe he's wrong. And I said, off the record, and I'm saying on the record now, he's always wrong. Mr. Speaker, a simple thing. You know, I realized that he couldn't say much about the numbers. So what he did was, he found fault with how they're calculated. But Mr. Speaker, you know, women lie, men do sometimes, but numbers don't. And so these are the numbers. The truth is that the economy is turning around. The fiscal situation is improving. But my friend from Castries South, Mr. Speaker, cannot appreciate the fact that St. Lucia is under new management and it is going forward, right? So, Mr. Speaker, what do I say to the member here? What do I say to the member? But we are doing our jobs. We have replaced, Mr. Speaker, negative growth with positive growth.
Honorable members, allow the member.
I tell you, the truth hurts. The truth hurts. So, Mr. Speaker, I support, Mr. Speaker, I support, Mr. Speaker, this motion because Mr.
Honorable
Speaker,
members, allow the member.
It is a stark contrast from what the honorable members on this side would like the people of St. Lucia to believe. They come and not a single solution offered. They just come. You know, if you say the CIP figures grew by 65 million, he will say no, it's not. He will turn the 5 and put the 6 behind. He will say it's 56 million. But that is what he does. He comes here and he puts on a show. But I do understand why. Because they have their own problems on that side. But you see, I don't want to be sidetracked by their internal politics. I'll come back to the numbers, Mr. Speaker. And their leadership struggle, I shall not be sidetracked as to who's fighting for position over there. But, Mr. Speaker, in the Department of Infrastructure, Ports and Energy, in Department 43, Mr. Speaker, there is 122 million,
Honorable
151 million, and $100 proposed to be spent, Mr. Speaker, under that department in various areas. Mr. Speaker, roads and the Millet Road, for example, has been done, Mr. Speaker, by the Ministry of Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we've seen work being done to uplift and upgrade the road in Masque, also in Otaboy, in Ansare, Mr. Speaker. They have done significant works, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this year our rivers and ravines under this program by the Department of Infrastructure will receive additional help, improved help. And Mr. Speaker, in accordance with what's happening now and in keeping with the need, Mr. Speaker, to better mitigate against flooding and landslides in low-lying areas, this government took the decision, not this year, but a year ago, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we spend additional monies to prop up areas like Jackmel, to prop up areas like Monda, to prop up low-lying areas in our communities like Ancillary and Canaries and Vanna, to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that they are properly desilted, that they are properly prepared for the hurricane season. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill and support the monies that are proposed to be spent by the Department of Infrastructure island-wide. Mr. Speaker, already we see that they have been doing a significant work island-wide, where the roads, Mr. Speaker, have seen a significant improvement. Even the roads in Castries East are doing better, Mr. Speaker. And I am so happy that the member was very thankful in his presentation earlier. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not all. There is so much more to go. And so, under the Department of Economic Development, Transport and Civil Aviation, Mr. Speaker, another reason why I support this bill, this motion, is under Department 56, Mr. Speaker, they propose to spend capital expenditure amounting to $47,443,700. Mr. Speaker, these are the new monies in their programs, Mr. Speaker, and it includes a number of projects island-wide to beef up the infrastructure and the social situation in our country. Mr. Speaker, even opposition constituencies have been benefiting from the work of this government. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's a small wonder why I support it. Mr. Speaker, therein is the constituency development projects, Mr. Speaker, which have been responsible for very key projects in all of our constituencies. And you notice that the heads of the opposition members are down because they're in concurrence. They know it, they feel it, they issue the contracts all the time. But yet they go on television, Mr. Speaker, and they tell people that they are victimized. We're not in the business of victimization. Mr. Speaker, we are here to make sure that all of the people, regardless of political persuasion, benefit from what we do. And you know, sometimes our constituents come and they make noises. They say, they make noises and they say, but listen to me, I'm a great supporter of the United Workers' Party. But here they are saying, Mr. Speaker, that somehow we are victimizing. We are victimizing. But, you know, a good cabinet colleague of mine, you know, quotes a scripture, which I will quote in a moment. And so, Mr. Speaker, under the CDP projects last year, I want to support the consistency of the funding of this program, because I have been able, Mr. Speaker, to resuscitate the important community center in Millet, Mr. Speaker, a building that has been down for 11 straight years. And they had about 5 of those years. And so 6 of those years were yours. And so, Mr. Speaker, the community was without a place to meet. The community was without a place to host a meeting or to do something recreational. And now, Mr. Speaker, with the CDP, we have been able to turn this building, which was abandoned. Thankfully, it was still structurally sound. And now, Mr. Speaker, it's been resuscitated. I invite all opposition MPs to the opening which we will have to show them how to manage a constituency. And so, Mr. Speaker, I thank the good people of Millet for participating in this project, for ensuring that this project was a tremendous success, Mr. Speaker. It was integrated where the tradesmen and the skilled men of the community came and ensured that we had a renovation works that were of the highest quality that you can put anywhere in St. Lucia, and it can stand up against any project anywhere. So I thank them very much. Mr. Speaker, the Jackmel playing field is also in that vein, where tremendous upgrading works is taking place there, Mr. Speaker, being funded by the CDP development program. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am even more inspired and encouraged, Mr. Speaker, that there is more to come in terms of the advancement of our constituency. Mr. Speaker, this motion in the estimates, Mr. Speaker, which have been provided, another area that has captured my attention and inspired my tacit support, my strongest and staunchest support, is Department 52 under the Ministry of Education. And what is being proposed to be spent there, Mr. Speaker, a total of 204 million odd, capital expenditure value at 18,170,700 in capex, Mr. Speaker. And you know, recently I was taken to task by the member for Castries South again, who doesn't understand professional courtesy. But what I did then was that I was full of gratitude to my colleague Minister of Education, who, Mr. Speaker, understood the plight and the need of my constituents. And so what she did, Mr. Speaker, she has done in many other constituencies, is after doing her analysis, she had realized that a number of our schools, Mr. Speaker, were in a state of disrepair because they had suffered from neglect from the previous administration, Mr. Speaker, who were underspending in our schools, 1 million annually, and now we're spending 10 million annually. But yet they would like the people of St. Lucia to believe that they believe and they support education so much. But whenever people say words, Mr. Speaker, I always judge them by what they do. And what we have done, Mr. Speaker, is we have improved tenfold the amount of monies that we're spending in education. And so I am going to say, at the risk of being criticized by the member for Castries South, thank you again to the minister and her department for understanding the need. And so because of that understanding, the Canaries Infant School, the roof is totally redone, state-of-the-art facility. works of retiling done in the primary school to beef up the facility. I'm going to say thanks again to the Department of Education led by the Honorable Member for Mikud North, that the Millet Infant School has been rehabilitated comprehensively. Thank you, Minister. Rehabilitation works at the Millet Primary School and the Rosal Combined Schools. Mr. Speaker, the works at the ancillary primary school has also been done in refurbishing the roof, Mr. Speaker, in the sums of thousands of dollars. I see the member for Castries East is looking at me in disbelief, because what is happening is that this evidence of work being done, and I can take him on a tour for him to see the leader, the Canaries Infant School, totally redone. Come on a tour, I'll show you. What is it, Mr. Speaker? I say the proof is in the pudding. We have worked, we have delivered, and there are some people who are shown up. This is simply what this whole exercise is about. You know, come here and pontificate and try to fool people to tell them this. It simply is that we are delivering, and not everybody is happy. Okay, there are some people who want to be in the government, and they'll do anything, Mr. Speaker, and I mean anything they can, Mr. Speaker. They will abuse their parliamentary privileges of immunity, and they will tell, not a white lie, a bit higher than a white lie. They will be erroneous, Mr. Speaker, about facts. They will fabricate their own stories, as the member from Castries South has done again today.
Honorable member.
Yes, sir.
Stay on point.
But I am staying on point. I'm contributing to his debate.
Some of your words are starting to cross.
Yes, but we have been through this house, and we have said, and he couldn't prove it when we asked him to, that the $32 million that he states that we have a contract with Parker Company, the same Parker Company where a principal recommended him, of that same company recommended him to remain on his job when he was CEO for West Indies Cricket, of World Cup Cricket. Mr. Speaker, he couldn't prove that there was a $32 million. We've been through that in this house. I didn't want to rise on a point of order, but that is erroneous. There is, again,
remember,
we are saying.
I'm just trying to keep you at focus.
I am very focused, but he said it, Mr. Speaker. The member for Castries South in his presentation said that there is a contract for $32 million. And so I'm telling him that that is a lie. That is erroneous. Prove it. He can't prove it. So what I'm simply saying, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, is that that information is not true. And that is an abuse of parliamentary privileges for political purposes. And so, Mr. Speaker, what we have provided in the estimates again is evidence of a comprehensive approach to the development of sports. That's what that is. For the first time in this country, we will have a national sports academy. He has spent all of these years telling people that he is responsible for Darren Sammy and he was the one who produced him. But, Mr. Speaker, where is the National Academy? There has been none. I'm talking about the estimates. We're spending money in sport development, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, right, the estimates are clear, where we will take a strategic look, a comprehensive look at the development, Mr. Speaker, of sports in this country. You see, building sporting facilities and improving them is just half the battle. But, Mr. Speaker, the time has come, and we're doing it now. We're instituting the program under the leadership of the Minister of Sports, the member for Dennery South, and the National Academy, Mr. Speaker, will afford a number of our students to pursue their academics, and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, while pursuing their academics, use the cluster of sporting facilities at Bossejou, the National Tennis Facility, the swimming facility as well in Rodney Heights, to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that that nexus that is created between the infrastructure of sports and education, that nexus will derive from it a comprehensive opportunity for sporting athletes to be developed. And so, Mr. Speaker, that's the approach, to ensure that we beef up the infrastructure, show sportsmen pride in this country. I'm doing it in my own constituency with Jack Mel, and we're about to open the Cannery Sporting Facility. Mr. Speaker, I will send you an invitation to ensure that that is done. And so, Mr. Speaker, we're ensuring that we give all communities, whether the east, the west, the north, or the south, to give them the greatest opportunity to prosper. Mr. Speaker, another reason why I support this motion is what is proposed in the Department of Agriculture. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, the Roseau Valley area, a very, very big agricultural belt, contributes significant sums to the development of agriculture in St. Lucia. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am very grateful for the amounts under Department 41. It says that a capital works project sum of $23,589,100 will be spent in that area to improve the farm drains, Mr. Speaker, and feeder roads improvement. Mr. Speaker, improvements have been done quite recently in Roseau to boxing plants. Mr. Speaker, also to give fertilizer support and other technical aid that is necessary to improve the yield per acreage from banana farmers, and to improve other diversification exercise in the Roseau belt, Mr. Speaker. So this is also very much so warranting of the support that this motion deserves. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am in total support of this bill, of this motion rather, to ensure that we give the farmers that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, when I traversed the Roseau area many years ago, there was a big sign that says, I'm talking about the year 2014, 2015, there was a big sign that says, Youth in Agricultural Project. But when you look behind the sign, Mr. Speaker, what you saw was forest. Tall, 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 tall bushes, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to mention who the Minister of Agriculture was then. And, Mr. Speaker, when I drive through the Roseau Valley today, I see young people working. I see the area is plowed for crops to grow. And I see the soil being tilted. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when it is really due to the passion of the MP from Castries Central, who has instituted her program called Synergy, and has brought inner city youth, Mr. Speaker, to come into a rural community and to create self-employment. And so this has been such an inspiration to youth all over the Roseau Valley, that agriculture all of a sudden now is becoming a lot more fashionable because of the project instituted by the MP for Castries South and the Ministry of Agriculture under the leadership. Castries, it couldn't be Castries South, what am I saying? Castries Central, under the leadership of the MP for Babonneau and Minister of Agriculture. So, Mr. Speaker, we see that the country is on the rise. We're not just talking, we're doing things, we're making it happen. All over St. Lucia, the projects are happening. Mr. Speaker, another reason why I support the estimates, Mr. Speaker, is the great support that is given, Mr. Speaker, to youth in sports, which we touched. And we see, Mr. Speaker, in the estimates, there is capex of about 20 million proposed to be spent, Mr. Speaker, in various areas. And that, Mr. Speaker, is warranting of the support. It is a strong and staunch commitment of this government's investment in youth and sports, and this government's commitment to the youth development of this country. Department of Housing is also another area, Mr. Speaker, where they propose to spend a capex of $10 million, Mr. Speaker, $10.2 million to be more precise, on various housing projects around St. Lucia. But I'm particularly excited about this because, Mr. Speaker, I can say, Mr. Speaker, with the approval of the Minister of Housing, that there are very advanced discussions being held with an investor, Mr. Speaker, in a collaboration between the Housing Department for a housing project in Canaries. So that is one of the reasons why I do support this motion, Mr. Speaker, because herein you have a number of initiatives, from housing to agriculture to youth and sports to tourism advancement to the improvement and the maintenance of education. But, Mr. Speaker, rather soundly, what we see is the summary suggests that we are returning to fiscal health, that there are a lot of encouraging signs about the fiscal situation as being presented here in the summaries of estimates. And it means, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that this is worthy of commendation, this is worthy of support. So, Mr. Speaker, with these words, I give my fullest support to the motion put forward by the Honourable Prime Minister, and I thank you for your indulgence.
Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Physical Planning, Natural Resources and Cooperatives, and member for Soufrière-Fonséja.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with the greatest of pride and an unsullied conscience as the parliamentary representative of the people of Soufrière-Fonséja to make my contribution to this honorable House and to record my full support to the 2019-20 estimates of revenue and expenditure as presented by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Almighty God for His continued preservation of my life and to give me the blessings, guidance, and strength in my service to my constituents and, by extension, the people of St. Lucia. I am grateful and will forever be thankful to my special people of Soufrière-Fonséja, whom I serve with the greatest joy and humility. Mr. Speaker, my presentation in this round of debate will be twofold. I will firstly speak to the programs within my Department of Physical Planning, and secondly, I will state the benefits that the 2019-2020 estimates will have on the socio-economic development of my constituency. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and the staff of the Ministry of Finance for their hard work, commitment, and dedication in the preparation of these estimates of revenue and expenditure. Mr. Speaker, as I thoroughly review the budget summary, I am satisfied and confident that we are building on our efforts in achieving fiscal sustainability. Mr. Speaker, the budgeted estimates for the Department of Physical Planning for the financial year 2019-2020 provides for recurrent revenue of approximately $1,312,000 and for expenditure of $14,154,000, of which recurrent expenditure represents 72%, or $10,154,000, and capital expenditure represents 28%, or $4 million. Mr. Speaker, Notwithstanding the revised revenue estimates projected for 2018-2019, which indicates an amount of approximately $1.290 million, because of the timing of this budget debate, I can proudly state that the actual collection as of March 31st, 2019 stands at $1,796,000, a 28% increase over the revised estimates and a 15% increase of the approved estimates 2018-2019. This increase is mainly attributed to an improvement in business activity at both our land registry and Crown Land sections, and more critically, to the collection effort by the staff of these two sections. Mr. Speaker, the budgeted recurrent estimates for the Department of Fiscal Planning for the financial year 2019-2020 stands at approximately $10,154,000. A 6.6% increase, or $672,000 over the previous financial year 2018-2019. Mr. Speaker, this increase provides for consultancy services in the amount of approximately $608,000 to facilitate the transitioning of the Development Control Authority into an independent statutory agency. Mr. Speaker, during the policy debate last financial year 2018-2019 in this Honorable House, I indicated the government's intention on the way forward with respect to the DCA. During the next policy debate to this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, I will provide an update on the activities completed during the last financial year 2018-2019 and outline the next set of deliverables to be undertaken in this financial year 2019-2020. Mr. Speaker, the other smaller increase of approximately $62,000 represents mold remediation and cleaning. With the presence of mold in the building and the heavy use of paper, given that the department is a service-oriented agency, the deep cleaning of the sections on a regular basis is necessary. In that regard, there will be a reduction in staff illness and a better quality of air circulating in the atmosphere. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, the department has no choice but to extend its deep cleaning exercise program aimed at reducing mold buildup and to safeguard the health and wellness of staff. Mr. Speaker, I wish to also indicate that Cabinet approved a restructuring exercise for the department during the last financial year 2018-2019 aimed at ensuring greater equity and parity among the various positions in the staff structure. It also lends itself to ensuring greater supervision at the various levels of management and further provides an avenue for succession planning. This is of the greatest concern to us at this time, Mr. Speaker, as several of our senior technical officers will, and in other cases, have proceeded on retirement. Additionally, the inability at the time to recruit individuals with the requisite levels of certification to function at these senior levels. We will, however, endeavor during this financial year 2019-2020 to make every effort in completing the recruitment process at the earliest. Mr. Speaker, I now turn your attention to the capital program for which a provision has been made for land acquisition. This financial year 2019-2020, the government has allocated $4 million for land acquisitions. Mr. Speaker, as you may know, land acquisition involves the compulsory purchase of private land or property by the state for public purpose. This initiative is consistent with government's policy and mandate to make land available for meeting the social and economic needs of its people, to include housing, schools, infrastructure, and other public development. The total approved budget for land acquisition for the last financial year 2018-2019 was $13,915,601. I wish to report, Mr. Speaker, that the Department of Fiscal Planning was able to successfully compensate most landowners affected over this period, including settling the debt of $13,150,000 accrued from previous years. Mr. Speaker, while this is commendable, the government is very concerned at the cost of and grievances aligned with land acquisitions. During the next policy debate, I will endeavor to provide some insight on how the government intends to significantly reduce this cost to the taxpayers of the country. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I wish to make mention of and thank the Minister of Finance for a budgetary provision of $75,000 included under the Office of the Budget, Equipment and Furniture vote for much needed furniture and equipment for the department. This represents an increase of 12.5% when compared to the previous year's allocation. This will go a long way in providing the necessary resources to our technical officers and staff members, as they are continually being required to produce the highest quality of work whilst keeping within the specific timeframes in response to our government's mandate. Mr. Speaker, I now move on to allocations on the estimates relating to my constituency. At the last debate of the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2018-2019 financial year, I noted to the Minister of Finance and the respective ministries for the intervention in the implementation of our programs and projects for the constituency of Soufrière-Fonsajac. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Cabinet colleagues, and the various agencies answered our call from the town of Soufrière-Fonsajac, and for this we are indeed grateful. Mr. Speaker, representation of my beloved people is of paramount importance to me and is the first order of the day for me when I leave the boundaries of my constituency on a daily basis to the capital. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am seeking further interventions from these capital expenditure estimates to further improve the lives of my constituents. Mr. Speaker, I refer you to page 569 under the head 43041, line items 37, where the Minister of Finance have allocated $1,824,750 for Millennium Highway West Coast Road upgrade. This road, Mr. Speaker, makes a crucial contribution to the socio-economic development of the country, and particular Soufrière. And I'm extremely grateful that we are going to get this upgrade after so many years of neglect. Mr. Speaker, under the same head, line item 102, there is an allocation for reconstruction and rehabilitation of roads of $11,437,998. Mr. Speaker, it is my hope that with this allocation, we can continue to do potholing of the roads at mainly Fonsajac, Boisden, Bouton, Belfort, Chateau-Belair, parts of the town, Fontbenier, and also Etangs down to Fonjalib. Mr. Speaker, we continue under the same head, line item 268, where there is an allocation for road improvement and maintenance program of $27,097,000. This allocation is welcome, Mr. Speaker, as this allocation could help significantly with the rehabilitation of the new development roads which have been neglected for over 30 years. Also, this allocation, Mr. Speaker, will also help with the complete rehabilitation of the Esperance Diamond Road. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Infrastructure, and particularly the member for Castries North, for the silt works done in the last financial year. And I look forward to the continuing of this project and also the extension of the scope of works this financial year 2019-2020. I speak now on the allocation for the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Local Government and Empowerment. Mr. Speaker, this government continues to show compassion for our people, no matter age, creed, class or color. And it's embedded in this government policy, in none must be left behind. I say this, Mr. Speaker, as I refer you to page 582 under the head 51006, line item 57, the allocation towards community after school program. This program continues to benefit many students in my constituency, and I thank all the coordinators for the service in ensuring the successful achievement of its objective. To reinforce my point of inclusiveness, Mr. Speaker, on the same page under the head 51006, line item 59, there is an allocation towards the home care program. Mr. Speaker, old is gold aptly describes the importance of old people in our lives and their service to our country. And again, I would like to applaud the government for consideration in continuing to increase this allocation as a safety net for our elderly and those in need. Mr. Speaker, moving forward on the same page and head, line item 86, there is an allocation towards local government community projects. This allocation is geared towards fiscal decentralization and provides a level of autonomy to the local councils. This allocation was reintroduced at the last budget, and I applaud the government and the Minister of Finance to see the need to continue this subvention. Mr. Speaker, through this allocation in the last financial year, the Foster Jacques playing field has been rehabilitated with a full resurface of the play area, and also enhancement works been done to the multi-purpose court. Through this allocation also, rehabilitation of public infrastructure was also achieved. Mr. Speaker, moving forward on the same page and head, line item 274, there is an allocation for the Soufriere Town Square of $59,439. Mr. Speaker, this allocation is towards the pedestrianization of Henry Belmar Street, formerly known as Princess Street. With the square redevelopment project completing in a few weeks' time, we have decided to create additional space for public use within the vicinity. Consequently, Henry Belmar Street will provide this additional space and access for users. Mr. Speaker, on page 584, head 52045, line item 251, an allocation of $10 million is made towards major repairs, rehabilitation of school plant. And at this moment, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for Education and Member for Nikud North for assisting with the rehabilitation of the washrooms at the Soufriere Primary School and a completely new roof at the Soufriere Infant School. It is also, I also hope that this financial year we can do some works at the Soufriere Comprehensive School, which is in very bad shape. The theater arts rooms, the labs, and some of the classrooms. Also, the Lazytown Combined School, there is need for expansion, at least 2 more classrooms, and the Soufriere Public Library, which is in very, very bad shape. So I am going to be knocking on the doors of the Minister of Education for assistance with those 3 projects. Mr. Speaker, on page 588, head 54065, line item 254, an allocation of $20,336,680 is made towards national sports infrastructural development. Mr. Speaker, investing in sports is investing in our sustainable development goals. And I applaud the government for the investment and vision for sports and youth development. And I am extremely happy that Soufriere was chosen as the first constituency to benefit from this project. And just last Friday, Mr. Speaker, we had the sword-turning ceremony for the complete rehabilitation of the Soufriere Mini Stadium into a world-class sporting facility, and also the construction of the Ruby Cricket Ground. And I am waiting in anticipation for the successful completion of those 2 projects later this year into next financial year. Mr. Speaker, on page 592, head 56018, line item 80, an allocation of $14,678,927 is made towards disaster vulnerability reduction project. And I look forward to the Minister for Economic Development and Member for Castle Southeast, Mr. Speaker, to assist with the construction of the Factory Road box drain and retaining wall of the river on the Wingsville side of the town. Mr. Speaker, on page 592, head 56041, line item 79, an allocation of $10,610,488 is made towards Constituency Development Program. This program continues to prove the significance of its purpose. And in the last financial year, many critical projects were undertaken under this program. Currently, phase 1 of the Old Trafford project is funded under this program, Mr. Speaker, and this is keeping to the objective of the program. I will further discuss this project at policy level next week. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity on behalf of my gracious people of Soufrière-Fonsajac to thank the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, for these estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2019-2020, and thanking in advance for his strategic intercessions. Mr. Speaker, we as a constituency have no doubt that the coming year, through these allocations from the various ministries, the transformation that have commenced under this administration will continue. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that this administration's fortitude with its calculated programs and policies will continue to lead us forward on the path of prosperity and success. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and honorable members for your indulgence, and once again, I solidify my support to the 2019-2020 estimates of revenue and expenditure. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that we suspend the House until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned until 9 a.m.
That brings us to the end of day one of the debate on the estimates of revenue and expenditure 2019-2020 in the sum of over $1.5 billion. Today we heard from a total of 7 members of Parliament, and the debate will continue on Thursday, 11th of April 2019 at 9 a.m. Join us then.
I am going to talk to all